Good afternoon, welcome to Connerty Meadows Farm. My name is Tom, and today we're going to be making another form of cheese, and it's going to be Gouda. So the first thing we'll do is we'll get our double boiler going, we'll fill our water up, and then we'll get our milk on, and we'll start to raise the temperature of the milk to 84 degrees Fahrenheit. For this recipe, we're going to require anywhere from 12 to 15 liters of milk. We've got 12 liters of milk, so we're going to go ahead and shake them up, make sure our cream is all mixed, and then add it to our 12 liter stock pot. We're going to put it into our double boiler, make sure we stir the milk well to get everything well mixed. And so the temperature of our milk coming out of the fridge was roughly about 47 degrees Fahrenheit, so quite cool. So it's going to take us quite a bit of time to warm this up because we want to warm it up slowly. So we'll put it on low heat, and then we'll heat this up until we reach 84 degrees Fahrenheit. We've warmed our milk up to 84 Fahrenheit, and so the first step after that is to add our culture. And so we're going to add a quarter teaspoon of our culture. And again, there's multiple different options you have here. This will depend on your recipe. So we've got a quarter teaspoon of culture, and we're just going to put it on the surface of the milk, and then we're going to allow it to rehydrate for a couple of minutes. Typically, I set mine for all my recipes to 10 minutes, and then it gives it a lot of time to sit on that surface of the milk and get rehydrated. So once you have your culture mixed around into your milk, we got to add the calcium chloride immediately following. So we're just going to get that ready now. And so you want a quarter cup of cool water, non-chlorinated cool water. And then we're going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of the calcium chloride. Okay, so our culture has had 10 minutes to dissolve into the milk on the surface. So now we're going to work that in with our up and down motions. So we got 20 up and down motions.
Just a slow and steady up and down motion. We're not making butter here. We're just mixing gently.
We've mixed our culture into our milk, and now we're going to add our calcium chloride that's diluted in a quarter cup of water.
Same gentle motion while you're mixing in up and down.
So 20 up and downs, same as the other stirring.
Same thing here, just up and down gently 20 times.
Okay, so while that sits for a couple of minutes, we're going to get our rennet ready, and we're going to add that right away. Okay, so typically I'll just rinse this because it's all going in the same pot anyway. Just make sure that it's rinsed out, and then we'll add our quarter cup of water again. 3/4 of a teaspoon of liquid rennet, and mix it around in cool water. And we'll add this directly to our milk. We're going to add our mixture to the milk, mixing it the same way, up and down motions, and about 20 of them.
This is all very gentle motions. We don't want to make butter.
Once we've added both our calcium chloride and our rennet mixture, we're going to let this sit for 45 minutes. Could be a little less, depending upon when the milk coagulates, but we're looking for that clean break. I know that typically it takes 45 minutes for us, so I just set it for 45 and forget about it. And then the other thing I do is I put a lid on just to make sure there's nothing getting in there while it's coagulating. Been 45 minutes, so we're going to check where we're at. The first thing I want to check for is your clean break, just to make sure that that we have that, and indeed we do. So we will cut the curd to about, I don't know, call it about a 1/2 inch size curd. And for this one, we won't let the curd sit. We'll actually continue to stir this for 10 minutes and until the curd itself starts to settle at the bottom. However, with higher fat content milk like we have, we're going to stir it for a little longer, and it could be upwards of around 20 minutes. So we just err on the side of caution. and we just stir once we finished cutting the curd for a full 20 minutes. So at this stage, we're not also adding any heat. The heat's off. And we'll set our timer for 20 minutes. And we'll continue to stir. And so the idea is to continue with very gentle motions. You don't want to over exaggerate your stirring motion. You just want these the curd to continue to shrink, get more of that whey out of it, and avoid matting. And that's where the curd binds together. We want to avoid that. So basically, as you see, ours is very fat, and so there was a little bit of buildup that was happening around the edges of the pot. So you just want to make sure you get all of that that curd out, so that you can actually break it down into smaller chunks. The other thing I find with our milk now, with the high fat content, is at the bottom, around the bottom of the pot, you'll also get some curd starting to stick to it. So just try to make sure you get all of your curd broken up and not adhering to any of your surfaces of your pot.
Just keep stirring.
So we've been stirring for about 7 minutes now, and you can start to see the curd is starting to get a little smaller, and you can start to see a little bit of the whey separated from the curd. So we'll just keep going. It's not ready yet, so 10 minutes is not going to be enough for us for stirring, because it's not going to readily start to sink to the bottom. You can see it's still just sitting on the top. So we'll just keep going, and we'll keep stirring nice and slowly. Make sure we uniformly stir, get all the curd, and we'll keep going for another 12 minutes. While you're stirring, the other thing to keep in mind is the next step. You always try to think 1 or 2 steps ahead so that you're ready to go. So we're going to boil the water because the next step involves scalding the curd. It's been about 14 minutes now of stirring. You can see they're starting to actually settle down to the bottom. I'm going to continue to stir for another 6 minutes, but you can see some of these things will start to float, and they're higher fat content, so they look a little bit different than the normal curd. And they're almost like butter. We've actually tried them a few times, because at first we were like, what are those things? And they almost taste like butter, but nothing to worry about. We just stir them in, but they will float for the first little bit, because they are higher fat. But you can see now that the curd itself will actually start to settle down into the bottom of the pot. But we'll continue to go for another 5 minutes, because we want to make sure, because our milk is such high fat content, we want to make sure that they all are going to settle nicely to the bottom. When we're stirring our curd, depending upon our fat content, it'll take us less or more time. So if you have store-bought milk that's been pasteurized and that has a specific fat content, you may be actually a lot quicker than us. But cows like Jersey that have higher fat and higher protein contents in their milk, you might be sitting here stirring a little longer. So just play it by ear. We just stick with the 20 minutes just to make sure that it's good and mixed and the curd is the correct size. But if you find that at 15 minutes, if your curd is sinking to the bottom of your pot, then you're ready to go to the next step, which is the scalding of the curd. Okay, so I find that bring your kettle to a boil well before the time that you actually need to scald it, because it will take a bit for the temperature to come down to about 176. And so I just bring my thermometer and I just kind of keep an eye on it. It will drop fairly quickly. So we're sitting right about 188 Fahrenheit right now. So we're pretty close to where we need to be. But like I said, this will drop fairly quickly. And so you at least have it ready to go about 5 minutes before you're ready to put it in. It's been about 20 minutes of stirring. So we're going to allow the curd to settle to the bottom of the pot. And as you can see, it's already starting to go very quickly. And so I'm going to set the timer for about 5 minutes and just let it settle all the way to the bottom. And then I'm going to get my scalding water, which will be a liter of water at 176 Fahrenheit. But we're going to scald our curd now, and that basically entails just pouring our hot water, which is 176, into our mixture. Our curd should be at the bottom at this point because it's been sitting for about 5 minutes. And we're going to stir this, and we're going to continue to stir for another 10 minutes. And we're going to hopefully have our temperature stabilize around 93 Fahrenheit, no more than 94. What you may find is when you are stirring, it'll max out at a certain temperature, and it might not be as high as 93 or 94, depending upon how much milk you have in there. And so what I found is just a little bit of residual low heat just to help bring it up. The other thing you can do is if you've got a little bit of room, you can add a little bit of extra hot water if you need to. But what I like to do is I just add a little bit of residual heat.
Just keep stirring, just keep stirring.
We're currently sitting at 91 and change Fahrenheit. I want to bring that up just to 93. As such, I'm going to continue to stir the curd. We're right at our 10-minute mark now, but it's just slightly lower temperature than what I would have expected. That's okay. We're just going to continue to heat it up, get it to 93. Continue to stir, and then at that point we will let the curd settle to the bottom of the pot for a 10-minute period. We've reached 93 Fahrenheit, so now we're going to let the curd settle to the bottom of the pot for 10 minutes. I'm going to take the thermometer out because I'm going to get ready for the next step, which is we're going to remove some whey from the pot and we're going to replace it with some water. So I'm going to get this thermometer out of the way for the moment, and we're going to set our timer for 10 minutes. And we're going to go and get our next phase ready so that we're ready to go when this is complete. For the next step, we're going to do what's called washing the curd. And so the things that I like to use are a strainer, a small little, measuring cup for scooping, because what you're going to do is you're going to place this into the whey itself, and you're going to scoop the whey off, and you're going to just empty it into another stock pot. So I got that ready to go, and so we'll set that aside. The other thing that you need to get ready to go is a bit of water. And so you're going to take out approximately a third of the whey, and you're going to replace it with that same volume of water at a specific temperature. So we'll get everything ready, and we'll get our water ready once we have started to take the whey off. It's been 10 minutes. So now we're going to basically put our strainer in and then just scoop out about a third of the whey. And basically what you're looking for is to get down to the bottom. You're just on the top surface of where the curd is settled. But it should be roughly about a third of the pot down. It just depends on how much curd you have in there.
Just keep scooping.
Once you start seeing the curd, you're getting pretty close. I like to bring it down right to the top of the curd when it comes visible and remove all that remaining whey. And that roughly equates to about a third of the pot. So one thing to take note is the level of the whey before you start removing it. So you can see at the top of the pot, there should be about a ring all the way around. And that's the point at which you want to add your water to. So we're right pretty well at the top of the surface now. Could have probably taken a little bit less, but I usually bring it down to the top of the curd. Good. Right, so we got about 111. So we're going to take this over. We're just going to add it to our curd. So again, keep in mind where you started. Now we're going to set the timer for 10 minutes. We're going to add no heat at this point. And what we're going to do is continue to stir for 10 minutes. And the big thing here is that we don't want the curd to mat. And so to know what that looks like, it's when it gets stuck together. So you want to make sure that the curd is, there's a good chunk right there where it's starting to mat already. So you want to break that up and keep the curd separate. And essentially at this stage, you're looking for the consistency of like a cottage cheese. So we'll continue to stir this for a period of 10 minutes. And we're looking for the temperature to stabilize around 99 to 100 Fahrenheit. And so we'll pop our temperature gauge back in. And then we'll keep track of the temperature. If we have to add a little bit of residual heat, we can. But given that we brought it right up to 93 Fahrenheit before, we should be pretty safe with just this warm water solution that came in, and we'll bring our curd up to the desired temperature. So already we're sitting at 99.6 Fahrenheit.
Stirring, stirring.
One thing to keep in mind when electing to make some Gouda is you can't really be doing much of anything else. You're constantly sitting here stirring. It's a lot more involved than some of the other cheeses that we'll make and we'll show you. So this one, it doesn't take maybe as long as cheddar, but cheddar, there's a lot of downtime where the cheese is just sitting. In the case of the Gouda, you've got a lot of stirring and a lot of different steps. So make sure if you're planning on making Gouda, set aside quite a bit of time just to make sure that you know you're focused 100% on your cheese. You see the texture starting to look like cottage cheese. We're ending the 10-minute stirring period, and at this stage we will stop stirring. We'll still try to maintain our temperature at 90 to 100 Fahrenheit, so we may have to add a little bit of residual heat. Throughout that 20-minute period, you're going to stir occasionally to prevent the curd from matting at the bottom of the pot. So you don't have to stir continuously like we've had to do in previous steps, but you will have to stir it on occasion to ensure that the curd doesn't mat.
Get your cheesecloth and your colander prepped.
The final step before we're going to pour this off, because it's been sitting for 20 minutes now, is just to do a quick texture test. Again, a lot of the time I kind of can feel it now, but try to grab a bit of the curd if you can. This is going to be a little bit more challenging than it looks. And then if it holds shape, which it is, then we know we're ready to go. Before you pour off, you're going to have to warm your colander and your mold. Part of this is making sure we practice good sterilization techniques. But the other thing is we don't want to shock the curd by putting hot curd into a cool colander. So we just make sure we rinse the entire surfaces with the boiling hot water.
Now we're going to pour off the whey and the curd so that it can drain in the colander and the cheesecloth.
Now that we've poured our curd off, we're going to allow it to drain for 5 minutes before we're going to transfer it to our Gouda mold.
Let's prep the mold together.
I take over from this point. Our curd has been draining from the whey now for about 5 minutes. We're going to go ahead and we're going to remove it from here and we're going to put it into the mold. It has already started to take shape of the colander that it's in. So I do find the best thing to do is to kind of squish it against the edge to help me get the shape that I need to get it into the mold. Now you can see I've squished it down in the mold there. Let me wash my hands. Now we're going to put the follower on top. Now this is our homemade press, and I will put the link for how to make this in the top and in the description box below, so you can go ahead and make your own press instead of having to invest in a really big one. The Dutch press is generally what is used to do Gouda cheese, but we didn't want to have a big one like that in the house, and we wanted to be able to store it. So we're just putting these on to help balance it out. And then we're going to be putting some weights on this.
Yes, spinning these wing nuts down is kind of a pain.
One thing with using this mold is that you want to make sure it's in the middle, and then we're going to add 15 pounds of pressure for 30 minutes. So the total of these weights equals 15 pounds. The purpose of the wing nuts is not to squish it down, it's just to keep it balanced. And we'll see you again in 30 minutes.
And this is what you want to see, a slow, steady drip for at least the beginning part of the half hour.
Half an hour has passed, and you can see that it has actually applied enough pressure that the top one has sunk down. So we're gonna flip it now. So we're gonna take these weights off. We'll take this top off. Take your follower off. Flip your cheese over. And then we're going to put the flipped cheese back into the mold. Follower back on. Slide it back into the middle here. And then, once we get this screwed back down,
you'll get pretty quick at doing the wing nuts after a while. And don't forget to clean up behind yourself.
We're going to add 25 pounds of pressure for 12 to 16 hours. We'll see you tomorrow when we unmold.
Our Gouda's been in for 12 to 16 hours now. So we're going to remove our weights and take it out of its mold, and we're going to put it into a heavy brine solution. So we'll remove our follower gingerly and flip it upside down out of the mold. And we'll just remove it very carefully because it will stick a little bit.
Just take your time unmolding it. If you don't, you're more likely to lose chunks of cheese.
There you go, there's your Gouda. So we've removed it from our mold, and we're going to put the Gouda into a heavy brine now. We're looking at about 12 hours for every kilogram of cheese that you have. So ours is a little heavier. We're about 1.7 kilograms. So we're going to put it for roughly about 20 hours. One thing that you'll want to do is flip it halfway through to make sure that the brine is covering the entire cheese surfaces, because this will float when it's in the brine, and the top surface may not get all the salt brine solution on it. So we flip it, make sure that it gets enough time and evenly coated throughout the brining process. It's been 20 hours, and again, we flipped it 10 hours into the brining process. And now we're just going to put it on our cheese rack and allow this to dry such that when you touch the rind of the cheese, it's not going to be wet to the touch. The other thing that you got to remember is that you want to flip the cheese while it's drying. So every day, make sure you're flipping it either once or twice a day so that it's drying evenly throughout. And then once we finish that process, when it's all dry, then we will apply a mold inhibitor cream wax to the surface of the cheese. So So at this point, it's been waxed. We will vacuum seal it. We'll put it in the fridge and we will age it for the length of time that's required for the type of cheese we want. Longer, obviously, if we want an older style Gouda or mild, we're looking at about at least 2 months before we start getting into the mild Gouda range. Well, thank you for hanging out with us today as we made some cheese. Hope you can check out some of the other videos that we've got with some of the other types of cheese that we've made here at the farm. Good afternoon and welcome to Little House on the Prairie. All right. Good evening. I don't want to do this. I don't like doing videos. All right. Do not drop the boiling hot water on your foot. Good afternoon. My name is Thomas and welcome to Connerty Meadows Farm. Today, we are going to make Gouda, or Gouda for us Munjicake Canadians. Goose fry.